The claim that the American middle class is shrinking is one that raises social and religious questions that need to be addressed.
Yet I'm not sure how we as a panel of religious experts can address this question effectively.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
Thank you for joining us today. We're so very glad you've tuned in. From week to week, we gather around this table and have discussions about, well, the subject you're hearing in the opening statements today. But you haven't met all of the panelists yet. I'd like for you to do that. And I'm going to ask each one to say who they are and tell a little bit about what they do. Let's begin with the gentleman to my right.
Hi, I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We're a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
I'm Bishop Michael Olson, and I serve as the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
Hi, I'm Tony Matthews, and I'm the senior pastor at North Garland Baptist Fellowship in Garland, Texas.
I'm Andrea Luxton. I'm president of Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Hi, I'm Carl Trovall. I'm the Richard J. Dinda Professor of Lutheran Identity and Mission at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
And I am Mel Robeck, Senior Professor of Church History and Ecumenics and Special Assistant to the President for Ecumenical Relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena. I am also an Assemblies of God minister.
Well, as you can see, we have a great panel assembled here today for this discussion, so very glad you could be here. Taking time from your busy schedules, I know sometimes can be a challenge, but you're here today, and thank you for that, and thank you for tuning in. Let's get right to our subject. In a recent issue of the Los Angeles Times, Dr. Brad Schiller, Emeritus Professor of Economics at American University, offered an opinion piece calling into question the claim that the middle class is shrinking. The question itself carries obvious social, political, and ethical implications. Dr. Schiller asserts that in 1969, only 15% of households were one-person households, whereas in 2019, the number has nearly doubled to 28%. At the same time, we have a growing population and a workforce that is spread along an ever-changing wage spectrum. When compared with the past, he asks this: are they worse off? Whether they are millennials who have moved into their own apartment or retired people who live independent of their children, he contends the answer is no. In earlier generations, neither the young nor the old could afford such independence. Even if the median income never changed, he argues, people would continue to improve their circumstances. I'd like for our panelists to consider at least these three questions today. Given those statistics can be used well or badly, are those who argue that the middle class is failing using facts or ideology to establish their claims? If the middle class is indeed shrinking, what can religious communities contribute that would slow or reverse that process? And then finally, should we be more concerned about a potential shrinking middle class or a growing uber-rich class in the United States? That's our subject for today. And again, welcome to the program. I'm glad you're here. We're going to go back to those who helped to begin the program. And Dr. Robeck, glad to have you back on the program. You opened with a comment. Can you tell us more of your thoughts on the subject, please?
Yeah, I'm a historical theologian. I'm not an economist, but I am I often think about how people use their money and who constitutes kind of the norm within the United States. I mean, I think that the American dream is always that we at least reach the middle class. And my concern is, if you look at some statistics, it'll say that we have improved in the middle class. If you look at other statistics, it'll say the middle class is failing and the poor are a growing population. It's also the case that the upper class, the 1%ers, so to speak, are a growing population. And And I guess for me, the questions that I would face as a religious individual would be, how do we use our money? What do we do to help people move into a more sustainable class, whatever that is? So, in other words, the real poor people, how do we help them move into a middle class that's a viable place for them? And how do we hold, in a sense, the feet to the fire for those who are wealthy, sufficiently wealthy, to be able to pay more to make that possible for other people? I'm not a socialist. I have to say I'm a capitalist, but I do not believe in unbridled capitalism. I think we have to have some kinds of checks and balances on the way we make money and the way we spend money. And I think that our general population would be far better off if there was fewer in the extreme and more in the middle. So my support of the middle class would be something that I think could be good for the nation, but I think it's also good for our churches. I think simply to allow things to extend the way they have been going, I'm not at all convinced is good for our nation.
All right, thank you very much. And Dr. Trovol, at the other end of the table, you also helped start the program today with a statement, and you're not so sure that it's an addressable problem here at the town hall
I guess
or by
my
religious folk.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go right ahead. No, you're on to it. There you go.
I really wrestled with this program, not because I don't think that those of us who work in faith communities, and myself an ethicist, I'm always concerned about economic disparity, social justice, economic fairness, all of that. So I think those are definitely issues. But what I always find to be complicated, and is what one of our statistics profs told me, he said, just remember, figures lie and liars figure. And you can cut statistics in so many ways to say so many different things, and you don't know whether you're really getting to the bottom of it. And you have to know what all the presuppositions are. And to do this, as I was reading about this middle class, there are contradictory studies from different places, even from contradictory studies who come both from more conservative politic and contradictory studies from a liberal politic about this issue of the middle class. And what I find frustrating is that we're trying to address a question that I don't even know that the economists have settled what the real situation is. I don't mind addressing, I mean, obviously we have a significant issue of poverty in the United States. I think the church has to help address that question. Now, the people in our congregations have different opinions about how best to help the poor. Again, I think that gets back to what you were talking about. Well, I'm a capitalist, but I'm not a socialist. Well, what does that mean? And but those are economic arguments, not religious arguments. The care for the poor is the kind of central issue. And I think the last thing I want to say is that the thing that has hit the middle class harder than the past, at least in my studies, consistent, is number one, higher ed is a path to more wealth, but higher ed is getting prohibitively expensive even for the middle class. Many people are going into debt because of it in a serious way. The second is health care. That is another issue that people spend way more on than they did in the past. And the third is housing.
All right, thank you very much, and for those clarifications as well. Reverend Plumley, what is your perspective?
Thank you. I would simply agree with those three, but I would add a fourth. I think tax policy is a moral issue, and we have seen the tax code grow more toward favoring investment over wages, and that is a choice for helping those who are at the upper end of the scale as opposed to those who are at the lower end of the scale. It's that kind of moral choice that I do think we have a voice in, and we can at least wave a flag and say, here's an issue that we need to deal with, and the church can be a place, or religious organizations can be places where those things are discussed, and where the moral authority of the church can be exercised.
All right, thank you very much. Bishop Olson, welcome back to the program. What are your thoughts on the program so far on this subject?
I find it interesting. I reminded of something President Truman once said. He said, if you placed all the economists end to end, they would point in all directions. And I think that's what comes to mind on this. I think it's, I think precisely statistics and epidemiology and economists, all of those, their sciences are as strong as their first principles, and it's limited, and it tells you so much. It's what you do with the information that's important, and I think that's where our religion comes in, and our faith. In the issues precisely of value. Where do you put your value? I think sometimes one of the values in our country, I think that I struggle with, and I think that we all could do more with, is that we tend to rely on the free market to settle everything. And not every issue can be settled with the free market. Now, I think a lot of things can, but there are certain things like health care. And it's the free market, without any sort of direction or regulation, cannot settle that question, because people become ill indiscriminately. There's a great state good or community good in keeping people healthy proactively. It's not something that can be settled just simply on supply and demand. And yet, again and again, we try to rely on that approach, and I think we end up with a lot of sick people because of that. I think there's, I also think that, college education has been used and put forward as a way to a higher economic class, but I'm not so sure that that's the point of a college education or what it should be. And I think at the same time, we've seen devalued the trades in our country, that somehow those are seen to be secondary places, and I think there's a value to be had with craftsmanship and carpentry and plumbing and welding and things that are intensive labor, and there's still a great need for that. At the same time, we haven't put any money or any value on our infrastructure, which is debilitating all the time. So I think these are all moral questions that really impact on where we put our money, and those are moral considerations that we can address.
All right, thank you very much. And Dr. Matthews, welcome to the program.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
It's a great topic. I think the church should be involved at all levels. I think we should certainly be concerned about the poor, without a doubt, and we should also not neglect the rich. I think we should minister to the whole person. I think about my childhood growing up. We grew up, we didn't know we were poor, but we were poor. And I think the path to moving into a better economic situation, financial situation for oneself is education. I think you have to do the best you can to get an education, but everyone is not cut out for school. And as we've heard earlier, tuition is just sky high. So I always tell our folks at our church and people that I know, just friends, hey, get a career. How can we help you get a career? If you're not cut out for school, or if you can't afford school, go to trade school. Get a career. I always tell our kids, hey, jobs are great and we want jobs, but also make sure you get a career that will sustain you over the long haul. I just think it's really important. I think preparation one day will meet opportunity, and we have to do the best we can in the church to help people be trained. And over 30 years, I've had folks in our church who are very wealthy, and some that aren't wealthy, and some who are struggling. And we try to just treat them all the same. And if you are rich and if you have means, hire people. Show them how you were able to get to where you are. And I think we just have to come together as a community, no matter where we are on the economic scale.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Dr. Luxton, your perspective, please.
Yeah, I think even though I like that image of the economists all facing in different directions, I think that's very true. I think there's some things we do know, and we do know that America as a country is rich. If you look at the world, the majority, greatest majority, by far, of the richness is in this country. So we are a country of privilege, when you think of us corporately. So what do we do with that? And where do we as faith communities respond? I go back to the Bible. It says a lot about stewardship. And I think there's that one story that I think is very moving in a way in the Gospels, where Jesus interfaces with the rich young ruler. And, the rich young ruler cannot take the give to the poor, go away, give to the poor. And so he walks away. And then there's that moment of sadness. And I don't think it's about him giving away money. It's about where his values are. It's about what values come first. And it seems to me that at a core is our problem, is that it doesn't matter whether you're rich or whether you're middle class or whether you're poor, that first of all the question comes, where do your values lie? And is your first value about, I need more for myself? Is it a value that has responsibility towards others? And how can we engage in that both individually within our local communities and within the government in the ways that we can influence the government to actually look at the values with which, how do we deal with our privilege really in a value-based way that moves the whole society forward?
All right, thank you. And Reverend Plumley and then Bishop Olson.
Yeah, I would add to that that we need to start learning how to understand our sibling relationship to all people,
Yeah.
Not just the people who live on the other side of our town, but the people who live on the other side of the ocean or the other side of the equator. And that is a critical ethical understanding that I think religious organizations can bring to all economic conversation that no one else has motivation to do.
All right, thank you. And Bishop?
I appreciate this, and especially your contribution and yours as well. But one of the things, and I don't want to take this into an area of partisanship at all, because I don't think that's what this statement is. But one of the things I found very troubling with the inaugural address was the me first ethic, which is alien to the Judeo-Christian tradition and also the whole Abrahamic tradition. And that was just blatantly put out there and even applauded. And to me, that is not only alien to the Christian, Judeo-Christian tradition, it's alien to just decent human decency. I mean, as far as me first, and then basically to hell with the rest of you. And that's a surefire path to hell and misery. And I think that's that bothers me a lot, because that's not an exclusive statement. I mean, that represents a set of values that underscore our economic structure in the United States and our economic values, which are undergirded by a moral value of just selfishness.
Thank you very much. One of the core principles, I think, that is being reflected in what you're saying, what I'm hearing, one of the core principles of church is charity. I mean, that is a focus. And so putting that against what you're saying, it certainly brings the balance that you're striving for, that the reason for the church's existence. Jesus said, didn't he, the poor you will always have. I don't think that was predicting, it was just stating fact. And then he encourages and insists that we respond to tending to the poor. That's my little speech for now, but I'm hearing that from you, and I appreciate that. Dr. Matthews, you want more to say on the subject?
I've traveled a little bit out of the country to places where it's pretty tough. There's a few places in India where I've been where we ministered to the untouchables. And I mean, I stand 6'2", and I had to bend down to get into their little place of worship to get in there. And the level of poverty is absolutely devastating. It just brings tears to my eyes to see human beings living in such conditions. And it was so humbling that they offered me the best of what they had to eat. And it was just some beets that they made and I was their honored guest. And so whenever I take trips like that and I come back home, I have to guard against getting upset with our people who I think we're really doing really well. But I do understand that if you have a quote-unquote rich person next door and around the block you're doing pretty bad, it's easy to compare ourselves. But I think, by and large, we may not be as bad as we think.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for the discussion so far. We're going to come back in a few moments for the summations. But before that, there's an important announcement I'd like for you to hear.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for tuning in today. We hope you've enjoyed today's discussion. You can watch other discussions like this in the archive section at the website where you can find past programs. And also, please be sure to drop me a line. Let me know what you would like for this panel to consider, what you'd like the topics to be or the subject. We'd be glad to hear from you. Let's go to our summations now. Let's begin with Reverend Plumley. You're first.
Thank you. We used to talk about the United States citizens being 6% of the world's population and controlling well more than 50 or 60% of the world's wealth. And that being said, that does not lessen the problems that we have within our own country. For the past 50 years or so, U.S. productivity has grown substantially, 70, 75, 78%. But the average compensation adjusted for inflation has only grown about 12 or 13%. And that means that there's all this money there's been an increase in national income, but it is being siphoned into only a very few pockets and not the pockets of those who have actually increased their productivity.
All right, then, Dr. Matthews.
Yes, I'm in the process of reading, Dr. Martin Luther King's book on the essential writings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and looking at some videos and things that he produced. And one of the things he says is that we can't expect people to pull themselves up from with their own bootstraps if they don't have boots. So I think as the religious community, we should just help people get to where they can go by giving them tools and do all that we can do to just help people move from one level to the next and to let them know that happiness, your significance is not based on what you have, but who you have on the inside, which is Jesus Christ.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Trovall.
Well, I had a woman who was born in communist China who used to work at Concordia, and someone talked to her about the lottery, whether she plays the lottery, and she says, "What do you mean? You were born in the United States. You won the lottery." And it was quite a stunning remark, mostly because you think perspective-wise that you're struggling, and I'm not suggesting that you don't have those struggles, but as you mentioned about India, there's so many of these countries that don't even have a middle class, and people either struggle in poverty or else they're well. And I think we can be thankful about our middle class, and I think we should be concerned about it. I have one suggestion that I read. I thought it was marvelous, and that is to limit CEO pay to X number of times, 16 times what other people make. So if the CEO gets a raise, everyone gets a raise. And I thought, wow, that's Japan has it, a lot of European countries have it. So that's
Thank you.
suggestion.
Thank you very much. Dr. Robeck.
Do you think we could use that in churches too, on pastors' pay?
Hey, there
Yeah, I vote for that.
We've got just a few seconds left. So
Yeah,
let's-
okay, so I'll go fast. I mean, we've heard about the rich young ruler. I think about the man who kept building bigger barns in order to take care of himself. I worry a lot about how almost a third of the people in the United States live alone. And whether they think about themselves or whether they think about anyone else. And I'm very concerned about that. I think the church has a lot to say about how we view the world, and I would strongly encourage people to travel.
Yes, thank you very much. Dr. Luxton, your summation.
Yeah, I think when we look at supporting everyone around us, I don't think that should be seen as when we talk about charity, for example, it's just not just giving. I just want to focus on structural issues here, because I think that is where we can bring the most change. It is actually to try and change the structures that automatically becomes like a revolving door and keeps someone down all the time. What can we do to shift some of those to help raise people up, giving them tools, giving them ways, and looking at systems.
Thank you very much. Now, Bishop Olson.
I think charity begins at home, is what we believe, but it doesn't end there. And otherwise, it's not true charity. I think charity has to be supported by justice, and it's really measured by participation. Everyone in society should participate in being able to contribute through labor, and receive through a just wage. And then also our responsibilities as a nation then extend beyond just simply to our own interior life among Americans and citizens, but also, are we good neighbors in the world to our neighbors to the south, our neighbors across the ocean? How do we contribute? And we do a lot. I mean, I think the United States is one of the most generous countries. Sometimes, though, we're not the most focused in the way we share our blessings. And it begins with gratitude and an understanding of ourselves and God's providence.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you each one for being here today. We'd like to hear what you think about this subject as well. So please drop us a line, let us know. And again, make suggestions about other topics or subjects you'd like to hear discussed on this program. We're glad you were here today. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their belief without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, and not only in theory, but in reality. So now, friends, until next week at the same time and over this very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.